Hey everybody, I am Mike with Local Impact. I'm sitting down with Claude Singleton from Bray and Oakley today. We're going to talk a little bit about everything. Um, Claude, why don't you go ahead and tell us just a little bit about Bray and Oakley and what you guys do?
Very good. Thanks, Mike. Bray and Oakley Insurance Agency is a wonderful independent agency. And by independent, that means that we represent several companies. We find what is best for our customer, which company is best, and of that company, what coverage is best. That's what we do, and it's wonderful. We're not defined by one company only. We do auto insurance, home insurance, life insurance. We also do business insurance. So we do a lot of different things. We have three offices in West Virginia. That's where we started back in 1920. It's a family-owned business, been four generations passed down. It's wonderful. But started in Logan, West Virginia, and Chapmanville, West Virginia, and Weston, West Virginia. We also have Lexington, Kentucky, where I'm out of, Richmond, Kentucky, which I'm also in often, and we have Pikeville, Kentucky. So we have six offices to serve our customers, and it's a good thing. But we're multi-line, that means different kinds of insurance, independent insurance agencies, and we're glad to help.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Clive, we're getting a lot of questions about RVs, and we're going to talk about that just for a second. What is the formal definition of an RV?
Yes. Well, I'll give you my definition. We'll stay away from formal. RV, of course, stands for recreational vehicle, and it can be different kinds of things. It can be an independent, motorized, mobile home driving down the road, or it can also be a towed behind item like a trailer or a camper. So it's different kinds of things, but our recreational vehicles is a general thing of it's really for recreation in general.
Sure. Yeah. Awesome. So it's pretty wide. What does, say, like an RV insurance policy cover?
Okay, that's a good point. As we're talking with someone, they call in and they say, well, I have an RV. We will define with them. Let's talk about what kind of RV do you have? Is it the kind that has its own engine, that has its own motor? And if such, it is driving, you are driving it, just like you're in your car or your van or your SUV, whatever. So you're driving that. And that has a different set of insurance coverages that we need to make sure is in place. If it's a tow behind thing, like it is a nice place you can stay in. It's a recreational vehicle with a bathroom and a kitchen and bedrooms and things like that, but still a tow behind. That's a trailer, and we will insure that slightly differently. If it's utility vehicle, you haul things around your house, and it's still a tow behind. All those things we're gonna cover with you and visit about that.
Okay, awesome, awesome. You answered it a little bit, but one of the questions that we got is what types of RV coverages are available? I know complexity for housing and vehicles, and I'm sure it
Yes,
probably exists for RVs as well.
yes, yes. Let me share more about that. The vehicle that is driving itself, we have to make sure that it is protected with liability coverage. What is liability coverage? As you're driving down the road, if you impact someone else and you cause injury to someone else or property damage to someone else, your vehicle insurance needs to be prepared for that.
Hmm.
And this is very important. You already are used to that on your car insurance, and you're used to that on your whatever vehicle you have. You're used to that already. It's the same with the driving SU or the driving recreational vehicle, the home that's on wheels, the motor home that's on wheels. It is itself a propelled vehicle that you are driving, so it's got to have certain liabilities. Interesting note: if you are towing that same kind of nice vehicle, it's a recreational vehicle that's being towed. You can sleep in it. You can use a bathroom in it. You can have the kitchen in it. If it's being towed, it does not have its own liability insurance. That's
Okay.
fascinating. So it gets attached to the vehicle that is towing it. So we are careful to talk with people and ask them, what kind of RV are you speaking of? What kind of motor home are you speaking of? And that's a big deal. And I'll be glad to give more detail about that.
Sure, sure. Okay. So what determines as far as cost breakdown, are there different levels? What I guess what determines the cost of RV insurance plan?
That's another good question. Going back to the liability, the level of liability that you choose to have is a concern. If you've got significant assets and you're concerned about being sued because you've got significant assets, you'll want higher levels of protection.
Sure.
I'll give you some examples, and this is not meant to be advice in itself, because a specific discussion would be better. And also, when I'm speaking of liability and potential for lawsuits, I always have to give a disclaimer. I'm not an attorney. Don't pretend to be one. Have not played one on television. I'm an insurance agent, though, and I've seen claims. And so I'm talking as an insurance agent only. So here goes. Let's pretend that you've got $100,000 per person liability, $300,000 total for accident liability. That's for bodily injury liability. And you've got $100,000 property damage liability. Now, that's a certain level of coverage, and you can have more or less than that. But at that level, there may well be a premium that's charged for that. And if you have significant assets to insure, or if you just are concerned that if I'm sued, I don't want to be having to sell off things or having to liquidate things, whatever, then you would want to consider more liability. And so that's one factor of the insurance. Another factor of the insurance would be, what's the value of that item? What's the value of that motorhome? Is it a $100,000 motorhome or more? Or is it a $50,000 or more? Or is it a pop-up pull behind camper or a trailer thing that has a pop-up tent in it? There's different prices for that. And if you want to be protected, if you want that part of your vehicle to be protected, that is damages to the vehicle itself, that damages to the RV itself, then there's coverage for that. Or let's just say it's an old pop-up trailer thing that you pull. It's really old and your parents gave it to you and it was worn out when they gave it to you. It functions, it rolls, and it sets up as a tent, but you say it's really no value. You may not insure that at all for damage to that vehicle. You'll just have liability on your protection to protect you.
Sure.
Because you're being pulled by your vehicle. Your vehicle pulling it provides the liability for that. But if something happens to it, let's just say it was in a wreck, or you're at the campsite and a tree falls on it, there's no protection for your stuff, for your camper.
Okay.
If that's the case, that would be liability only.
So Claude, since you guys have so many different providers, and I'm sure there's many different avenues, what is the best way to insure my RV? Okay,
that's a very good question. Because we're independent, we've got different companies to choose from. We will study that and consider and discuss it with you. Is it better to add that to an existing auto policy that you already have? Is it better to do that, which we can often, or should we have a standalone RV type of policy? And we will analyze how you use that. And all these things, we're assuming personal use. That's not for business use, because that would be another discussion. But all this is personal use. How many miles are you going to be putting on? How far will you be traveling? What other packages you might want with that? Or is this going to be local use? And all those things will come into it. But we'll discuss that, and we will help figure out the best for you and give you those alternatives, and you can make that decision, uninformed decision. That's what we do.
Great. Okay. Awesome. Got you.
Yeah.
So would my homeowners policy cover an RV if it's parked?
That's a good question. In general, and I'll need to say this depends on companies and depends on states as well. But in general, we don't depend on the homeowners policy to provide the coverage for that. In general, we don't. But there's a possibility you can have coverage under homeowners insurance, but we generally do not recognize that. Okay. That's not what we have our coverage.
Okay. So what makes, are there similarities, differences between RV coverage and like say auto coverage?
There really are. I mentioned earlier about the liability. On car insurance and on auto insurance, you've got your liability protection to protect other people from your actions. And that is in the event that you injure them, that the insurance company can pay up to so much per your policy limits, the level that you chose. They can pay so much for per person and total for accident for that. And that's important. Also, the damages to their property, that's on there. There's also comprehensive and collision coverages. And these are physical damages to that vehicle, to that motor home, or to that recreational vehicle itself. That is very important. All is very important in the whole package of things.
Okay, cool. If people wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way that someone who's got more questions about RV can find you, Claude?
Oh, perfect. You can see that on the listing here that we have at the bottom here, Bray and Oakley Insurance Agency. And I'm in Lexington. We've got offices, like I said, 6 different places. Just call one of our offices. And if they want to speak with me directly, they can do that as well. Just have them ask for me, and that's okay.
Awesome. Well, Claude, thank you for talking to us today about RVs. Greatly appreciated.
Glad to.